of utter dedication. You see, we are living a life. We have all the objects. We have a lifestyle. We have a house. We have an office. We have social circle. We have other sources of engagement, entertainment. Still, we go to a place of worship, a temple, for example. And at the altar, we bow down, we close our eyes. So that temple is in our assessment, our evaluation. It commands top priority. Therefore, we leave our house, we leave our office, we leave our engagement and go to a temple. Similarly, we have to have a altar of devotion. This could be a concept, this could be a belief, it could be a focus that may include the whole package, a package of bhajans, kirtan, arti, meditation. That's all. Each person is free to make his own altar of devotion and then practice like that and get into a habit, so much so that it becomes top priority. So a self-created altar of devotion alone take the mind away from objects and the world. Here it is a responsibility, a prerogative, and scripture says it is the purpose of life, purpose of our existence. To find that form of the divine, that image of the divine, that understanding of the divine, on which we can offer everything. And here, offering everything means offering your points of view, offering your beliefs, offering your habits, your patterns of thinking. All that has to be offered. That will not be possible unless we begin to like the altar of devotion which we have created ourselves. So it is the liking that is the main driving force. Only there would the craving mind would be surrendered, and surrender with utter dedication. Just as eating, we are dedicated to eating, we are dedicated to drinking fluids, we are dedicated to sleeping, we are dedicated to talking, we are dedicated to a leisure. Now we have to be more dedicated than all these to at the altar of devotion. Our new style, so to say, of a life of a devotee. One should tell oneself that one has now to lead a life of a devotee. Just as a soldier has to lead a life of a soldier, a sportsman has to lead a life of a sportsman. A pilot has to lead a life of a pilot. So if you are a pilot, you can't have too many options. If the flight is at 5 o'clock, you have to be at the airport by 4 o'clock. And if the flight comes back at 12 midnight, so you reach home by 1:30. And this goes on and on and on. If the soldier is posted in the mountains, he is in the mountains. If he is posted in the desert, he is in the desert. So you are doing what your work demands, work or a profession which you have chosen because you have a liking for that profession. You wanted to enter into that profession, and you are therefore you have embraced that profession. So all that is involved in the practice of that profession has to be accepted gladly. And we are all experienced in this behavior, in this lifestyle, in this belief. Now the scripture is asking us to take the next step. You may be a soldier, you may be a sportsman, but you have also now to be a devotee. So first try to understand what is the life of a devotee like. And practically speaking, devotee has to like God and devotee has to not like objects. That's the statement you write for yourself in front of you and look at that statement. And then you evaluate, where do you stand in liking God and not liking objects. At the end of the day, every day before going to bed, one must write one score. How much do I like God and how much I dislike the objects? And then is the direction. So you have to devise ways, the psychological ways, emotional ways, intellectual ways, physical ways. All these demand the best creativity that is there inside each one of us. All the creativity has to be garnered to devise ways whereby when you write in your diary at night, you should be able to write that today I liked God more than yesterday. Today I dislike the objects more than yesterday. This has to happen. Then one would have gone to the altar of devotion. Then one would have taken to the life of a devotee. That is the secret, that is the key. Thus, through constant practice, you will come to experience this contact with the higher. So contact with the higher involves first to not have contact with the objects. having contact with the objects, one cannot have contact with the higher. So first let go the desire for objects, the running after the objects, the liking for objects, talk about the objects, discussion about the objects, thinking about the objects. This is some work, and only those who like to take up this work should take to it. There is no compulsion of any kind. It has to be voluntary. Because the feeling is more important. Unless that feeling is there, just doing for the sake of doing will not take us anywhere. So first should let go. I have no contact with the objects. I should have no contact with the objects, which means I should not be thinking about the objects. And then you create a time. All the time that used to go on thinking about the objects, now by not thinking on the object, you have created some time, some surplus time, some spare time. And as soon as you become aware that you have a surplus time with you, that surplus time should be diverted towards devotion. And that plan should be ready. I have to learn this new prayer. I have to learn this new arti. I have to sing a bhajan. I have to compose a bhajan. I have to practice any chant. I have to learn Sanskrit verses. Immediately switch the gears, change the gears. And all this has to be monitored on a daily basis before going to bed. One must have, great men have advised, one must have a punishment in place, penalty in place. Otherwise, the mind won't easily accept this change. The change from objects to divine, the mind would resist. So there must be a penalty, punishment for the mind if we doesn't develop the desired amount of dislike for the objects and the desired amount of liking for the divine. It has to be objective. It cannot just be subjective. This is what is meant by constant practice. And when you are into this constant practice, then you will get a glimpse of a higher realm. Higher realm means the spectrum of divinity. An individual who has, with discrimination, thus understood the cause for all his pitfalls and sorrows, must strive to withdraw himself from all his mental entanglements and be released from its usual conditionings. Constant vigilance, constant alertness, accuracy of judgment, sincerity of purpose, all that must go into the practice of discrimination. And one should tell oneself that if I'm not doing this, that means if I continue to like the objects and I continue to not like the divine, if my life wants to be stagnated here, doesn't want that change, then I must be sharp enough to know what are my sufferings as a result of this liking for objects and not liking the divine. What is the volume of my suffering? What is the quantity of my suffering? One must have a cause and effect relationship. I went into overeating. This is the problem. I went into overspending. This is the problem. This is what is like to evaluate your behavior of addiction to objects and the world. One should remind oneself to convince the mind that, look, mind, you are suffering because of all this. And therefore, why don't you try withdrawing from the objects? You have to tell your mind.